know, I don't think interviews are the hardest part of job hunting. I think the hardest part is everything that happens after you walk out of that room. Because while you are sitting there answering questions, there's still hope. Hope that maybe this is finally the one. Hope that maybe your life is about to change. Hope that maybe all those applications, all those rejection emails, all those mornings spent refreshing your inbox are finally about to mean something. And hope is a beautiful thing, but it's also a dangerous thing. Because the higher your hopes are, the harder the silence hits. I think every unemployed person knows that interview feeling. You wake up earlier than normal. You iron your clothes. You check your documents one last time, even though you've already checked them 3 times. You practice answering questions in your head. Tell us about yourself. Why should we hire you? What are your strengths? Questions you've answered so many times that you could probably recite them in your sleep. Yet somehow, every interview still feels different. Because every interview carries the possibility of changing your life. You leave the house thinking, maybe today is the day everything changes. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with believing that. Hope is what gets you out of bed. Hope is what convinces you to print another CV. Hope is what makes you apply again after the previous rejection. Without hope, most people would have stopped trying a long time ago. Then you arrive, you sit in the waiting area, and suddenly you're surrounded by people who want exactly what you want. Some are dressed more formally than you. Some seem incredibly confident. Some barely look up from their phones. Some are reading through their notes one last time. And without even realizing it, you begin comparing yourself. They look more experienced. They seem smarter. Maybe they answered better than I will. It's strange how quickly our minds become our biggest critics. Before anyone else has judged us, we've already started judging ourselves. Then your name is called. You smile, shake hands, take a seat. The interview begins. Some questions go well. Some catch you off guard. Sometimes the panel smiles. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they write notes while you are talking. And suddenly you're wondering whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Then it's over. They thank you for your time. They tell you they'll be in touch. You smile again. Walk out. Take a deep breath. And for a brief moment, you actually feel proud of yourself. You think, I answered that quite well. Maybe I actually have a chance. You even allow yourself to imagine getting the call. You imagine telling your family. You imagine changing your WhatsApp bio from looking for opportunities to something else. You imagine waking up on your first day of work. You imagine receiving your first salary. It's amazing how quickly the human mind begins building a future. Then the waiting begins. At first, you're patient. Every phone vibration makes you look. Every email notification makes your heart beat a little faster. Unknown numbers suddenly become exciting instead of annoying. You keep telling yourself, they're probably still interviewing people. These things take time. I'll hear something this week. Then the week passes. Nothing. Another week. Nothing. Then another. Still nothing. And that's when something starts happening that I don't think enough people talk about. Silence. Silence has a way of making your imagination louder than reality. Because when nobody tells you why, your mind starts creating its own answers. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I didn't smile enough. Maybe they didn't like me. Maybe I'll never get hired. And here's the thing. None of those thoughts came from the interview panel. They came from the silence. Sometimes there are genuine reasons why someone else is chosen. Maybe they had more experience. Maybe they were a better fit for that particular role. Maybe the company changed direction. Maybe the hiring process took longer than expected. And yes, sometimes people walk away feeling like the process wasn't as fair or as transparent as they had hoped. Those experiences are real. But here's what worries me the most. Not what happened in the interview room, but what starts happening inside our own heads afterwards. Because disappointment has a way of changing the way we see ourselves. And if we are not careful, one interview becomes two. Two become five. Five become 10. And slowly, without even noticing, we stop saying, I didn't get the job. And we start believing, maybe I'm just not good enough. And those are two completely different statements. One describes an outcome. The other attacks your identity. And that's where today's conversation really begins. Because if you have been unemployed for a while, you'll probably understand what I'm about to say. After enough interviews, you stop getting excited. You still apply, you still prepare, you still show up, but something inside you becomes quieter. Not because you've given up, but because you're trying to protect yourself. You stop telling people that you have an interview. You stop telling your friends. You stop telling your family. Because you don't want to answer the same question a week later. So, did you get it? At first, that question feels encouraging. Later, It feels heavy. Not because people are trying to hurt you. Most of them genuinely want to know. But every time you're asked, you have to relive the disappointment all over again. You have to say, no, I didn't get it. Or even worse, they never came back to me. And somehow, the silence starts following you everywhere. I've also noticed something else. The longer someone stays unemployed, the smaller their world sometimes becomes. You don't go out as much, not always because you can't afford it. Sometimes it's because you are tired of pretending you are okay. You're tired of answering questions. You're tired of explaining your situation. You're tired of smiling when you're carrying disappointment that nobody else can see. So you stay home. You tell yourself you go out next time. Then next time becomes next month. And before you know it, loneliness has quietly moved in. I think that's one of the most dangerous parts of unemployment. Not the lack of income, the isolation. Because when you are alone with your thoughts every day, those thoughts become louder. You start replaying interviews from months ago. You remember answers that probably didn't even matter. You imagine different versions of yourself. Maybe if I had spoken more confidently. Maybe if I had worn something different. Maybe if I had answered that one question differently. But here's something I've had to remind myself. Sometimes we are trying to solve a puzzle without having all the pieces. We keep blaming ourselves for things we could have never known. And that's exhausting. I also think we need to be careful about something. Disappointment has a way of making us believe that every future opportunity will end exactly like the last one. One rejection becomes proof that another rejection is coming. One unanswered email becomes proof that nobody is interested. One difficult experience becomes evidence that nothing will ever change. But our minds are funny like that. They take one painful experience and quietly convince us it's going to happen forever. That's why protecting your hope is important. Not blind hope. Not pretending everything is okay. But the kind of hope that says, I don't know when things will change, but I'm not going to let today decide the rest of my life. There's a difference. If you are listening to this after another interview, or after another rejection, or after another week of silence, I want you to hear this. Don't let one outcome become your identity. Don't let one employer decide how you see yourself. Don't let one difficult season convince you that your future has already been written. Because it hasn't. Life has a strange way of changing when we least expect it. Not always as quickly as we'd like. Not always in the way we had imagined. But sometimes, the opportunity that changes everything arrives after the moment you were most tempted to stop believing it ever would. So maybe today, instead of asking yourself, why wasn't I enough? Ask yourself a different question. How do I keep believing in myself even when the outcome isn't what I had hoped for? Because that's the question that will carry you further than any interview ever could. If you have made it this far, thank you for spending these minutes with me. I hope this reminded you that you are not the only person carrying these thoughts in silence. This is the calm spiral, where quiet struggles find a voice. Take care of yourself. Keep showing up. Keep applying. Not because every opportunity will say yes, but because your story deserves more than one unanswered email. I'll see you in the next spiral.